turn steps or changing directions, something that we do every day and we often take it for granted, that is, until we can't do it. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we cover anything and everything related to movement in the context of neurologic injury, empowering you with as many tools as possible to reach your maximum functional level and hopefully an overall healthier, more fulfilled life. And all that being said, today we're going to cover turn steps. How to turn or change directions without fear of falling, and maybe just making it feel a little bit more natural. So anytime you've had damage to your brain or your spinal cord, or you lose the ability to walk, it can be a little bit awkward to regain this very important skill. So in the first part of this video, I'm going to go into all the little different components that are required to be able to turn efficiently and safely. And then, of course, I'm going to give you some exercises to help build a foundation, a solid foundation with all the little components that are required for you to be able to improve your ability to do this skill. So what all does it take in order to be able to turn efficiently? Well, there's a lot going on. And I've said this before, but it's always worth repeating. Remember, we don't really think about all of these little things, but it is good to understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to think about all these little components when you're actually performing the skill, but it does help to know what you need to focus on or what foundational activities are required or feed into this bigger skill. So first, when we're turning, there is a disruption in our vision. So anytime you turn, it's very hard to stabilize your gaze, and this alone can really disrupt your balance. So if you haven't watched my video where I break down balance, I go into that in a little bit more detail in that video, and I will link that video in the description below. But it's important to keep in mind because it is going to make some of the exercises that we do make a little bit more sense. So for this exercise, what you want to do is just find a spot directly behind you. I moved out of the way so that you could see my spot here, that little green piece of duct tape. And you're just going to start with your feet side by side and just turn and look over your shoulder all the way until you can see that green dot, and then turn and look over the other shoulder so you can see it over the other side. This head movement is a really critical movement when it comes to doing turn steps. So this is a good starting point just to retrain your vision and how to adapt when the world starts spinning. So first step is to start with your feet side by side. Turn and look over your shoulder, and then turn and look over your other shoulder. When you get really good at this, what you want to do next is try and do this with a stagger stance. Now remember, the goal for this entire sequence is to prepare the visual system, or the brain working with the visual system, for turn steps. So one position you want to put your feet in once you get comfortable with your feet side by side is in a stagger position. That is one step in the turning process. So you want to try and get your feet in all those different positions to start retraining your entire body to work together with your balance system to keep you upright when you are performing turn steps. And then you're going to do the same thing. Turn and spot that green dot looking over the right shoulder. Turn and spot it looking over the left. The whole time, keep your core really tight on this. I noticed even myself, I started out and I wasn't really tight, and I was swaying just a little bit more, and as soon as I really engaged and got tight through my core, I didn't sway as much. So definitely make sure you stay really tight through there. That'll just help with your balance. And then switch your feet so that the other foot is in front in that staggered position, and do the same thing. Look over your right shoulder. Look over your left. The slower you turn your head, the easier this is going to be. But of course, you do want to get up to a little bit of a faster speed because that's going to simulate turn steps a little bit more. So start out slow, get comfortable with that world spinning. And then you can try and speed it up just a little bit. And that is head movement in preparation for turn steps. Another component is that there is a deceleration component. In other words, being able to stop your forward momentum. Some people are really good at faking having good balance, and I call that just forward falling, meaning that you're just kind of falling from one step into the other when you're walking forward, and you can kind of fake it a little bit and not really have great balance. And usually the way that I can expose this is by having someone walk and just telling you to stop mid-walk. That is usually a good indication whether someone really is in control or whether they're doing this forward walking by just kind of falling into the next step. So keep that in mind, because that is something that you want to make sure that you do focus on in order to be able to turn with more confidence and not let it turn into one of those situations where you feel unstable. So for this exercise, what you're doing is working on deceleration. So this is a resistance band right here. These are called pull-up assist resistance bands. You really want something that's really, really thick so that you know it's not going to break on you. And then you want to put it in a door, preferably a door that opens opposite to the direction that you are going to be using it. So you'd want a door that opens outward. And what I like to do is loop it around the doorknob to make sure it doesn't slip out. And then I have this fancy vest that's actually made for activities like this. You can really find any way to secure it to yourself. You can even just wrap it around your waist. So you're going to back up as far as you can, and then as slow as possible, you're going to come forward. Again, back up as far as you can. And then even though that bungee's pulling you kind of hard, you want to go as slow as possible coming forward. And again, back up. And then as slow as possible coming forward. So I know it seems obvious, but there's also a rotational component. And this is really going to expose anyone who doesn't have good alignment, right? So if you spin something that's straight, it'll pretty much spin on a dime. But if you have some asymmetries, especially those of you that have suffered a stroke or brain damage on one side of your brain and you have hemiplegia, turning can really expose some of those asymmetries that you have in that vertical alignment. So I know I talk about posture a lot on this channel, but definitely as much as you can, keep your body in alignment or work on stretching the tight structures and strengthening the weak structures to keep your body as straight as possible. Super important, especially when it comes to taking a turn step. And then there's our feet. So there's positions that our feet get into when we're taking turn steps that we don't necessarily need to do when we are walking in a straight line. In particular, your base does narrow quite a bit when you need to turn. Now, most people will just compensate by just keeping their feet wider and kind of taking a wider turn. However, it is good to mention, because if you do feel awkward and you don't really know why you feel awkward when you take turn steps, being mindful of the fact that to take a smooth, efficient turn step or changing directions does require you to narrow your base of support, and definitely something that we need to address. So what you're doing in this exercise is working on the hip rotators in one hip in preparation for turn steps. So you can see I'm doing this in both directions. I'm going in front of the leg and behind the leg. This is just to help you prepare for any conditions in which you might have to turn. So preparing you for being able to turn backwards, turn forward. You got to be able to really prepare for both of those movements. So that's what we're doing in this exercise. So you can see I started by just stepping the foot close to the other foot, but maybe not necessarily crossing the foot yet. And then once you get comfortable with that, then you can start taking a bigger step and trying to actually start crossing one leg in front of the other leg. And of course, you do want to do this on both sides just to make sure that, again, you're ready for any conditions in which you would have to take a turn step. So if we went to the other side, again, just stepping that foot close first, and then trying to go a little bit more across. Same thing with stepping behind. Start by just doing a little step where it's slightly behind the other foot, but still safe. And then once you get really comfortable with that, you can really start trying to step that foot back a little bit further. The most challenging is going to be crossing that foot all the way over so that it's actually on the other side of the leg that you're standing on. And again, you want to try and stay really tight for this exercise. And you're just stepping behind. Again, we want to prepare the body for any conditions in which you would have to take a turn step. So definitely stepping behind. Go ahead and step behind on the other side. Step behind. The reason it's important to practice these things in your home is that your body is able to respond a little bit better in a familiar environment. So always getting really comfortable with these activities in a familiar environment definitely is a necessary preparation step if you are not comfortable with turning in public. So definitely practicing this in a familiar environment where you can control the environment. You know people aren't going to be walking into your path. Definitely highly recommend that. So that's why I always recommend you practice these in your home first. Stepping behind, and again, stepping across the front. Stepping across the front, staying really tight through your core and getting really comfortable with that step. And then the last component, and this isn't for everyone, and most people can get away with never doing this, but it is important to know that in most cases, under normal circumstances, when we're turning, there are the occasions where our feet actually cross, especially if we're doing a 180-degree turn. So there's two different types of turns. There's just 90-degree turns and 180-degree turns. In some cases, your feet will cross. And for those of you that have hemiplegia, that can really disrupt your balance, especially if you're still in the phase of regaining that body awareness. I definitely see that things become much more challenging, definitely more challenging to control that hemiplegic side anytime you cross midline. So it is important to be aware of this, that in most cases, our feet will sometimes cross when we're taking a turn step. And so some people will become anxious, or their turn steps will just be awkward because they try and avoid this position of their feet being crossed. So what I'm doing here is what I call an around the world towel slide with my foot. And what we're doing is I have my foot on a little piece of paper towel. If you have carpet, you can use a furniture slider, something similar to this. But what you want is you want something that slides on the floor. So you're going to keep your foot on the ground the whole time for this activity. What you're trying to do is center your weight over the non-moving leg. So centering your belly button directly over the leg that you are standing on. Try and keep a soft knee. Try not to lock your knee out on the leg that you're standing on. And then you're basically just going to try and slide that towel or slide that furniture slider in a half circle. you want the goal to be that you can get past midline. So you can actually get that foot on the other side of the leg that you're standing on. But to start out, you can always just do a little one, maybe get close to your foot, but not cross midline. And then as you get better at this, trying to get that foot as far over onto the other side as possible. So those are all the main components that go into taking a safe and efficient turn step. Now, please be aware that most of you have probably compensated for a lot of these, so you don't necessarily have to do all of these, but not doing some of these could be one reason why it does feel more awkward and not as natural when you try and turn. Now, I did mention that rotational component earlier. There aren't really any specific exercises that I would recommend for that, but the only reason I mention it is just always good to work on your body alignment and really pay attention to that with all the balance exercises that you do. Make sure that you're not tipped to one side, but just really try and keep that straight body position whenever you're doing anything in sitting or standing. And then the last group of exercises that I think are really critical in order to be able to turn safely and efficiently is working on getting your feet into different positions that you don't necessarily need to do when you are walking forward. So working on tandem stepping, so putting one foot right in front of the other, I think is extremely valuable in the early stages. You can just start by trying to step your foot forward and get them in what we call near tandem or towards a straight line, and then slowly start to work your foot over with the end goal of eventually getting your foot all the way over onto the other side. And I would work on this on both sides. So if you have hemiplegia, I would definitely work on crossing your right leg over your left leg and your left leg over your right leg. I would work on this stepping forward and crossing the legs and stepping behind. I think as many different foot positions as you can get into and stay there and maintain your balance. It's just going to build your confidence when you actually go and take those turn steps. So for this exercise, what we're working on is turning. It's one of the beginning steps. I like the corner because it gives you a lot of support around you so you can feel really safe and just start getting comfortable with turning around in a full circle. So again, you're going to start sitting down. You're going to stand up in the corner and we're just going to work on turning. So you're going to turn away from the corner and then turn back the other way, just getting really comfortable with turning in both directions. Again, having the walls here for a little bit of added security and a chair behind you. And just working on turning. And that is it for this video. I hope you all found that helpful. If you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, leave your comments below. This video was inspired by a recent video where people brought this up in the comments as something that they are having trouble with. So definitely comment below. I read every single comment. I try and respond to most of them, so definitely leave your comments below. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.